Hello, every pony, and welcome once again to another fanfiction reading by Aska. Today, we'll be reading Building Bridges by Cloudy Skies. Now, I don't know much about the story. All I know is that it is a shipping fic, apparently. I could be wrong, I don't know, but it has Twilight Sparkle in it, so I'm willing to give it a read. Building Bridges by Cloudy Skies. Twilight Sparkle was, as was often the case in the afternoon, intensely focused on reading a book at her desk. Tonight, Dr. Hawk's astrological anomalies and astral artifacts was the subject of her attentions. Without Spike out of town for the week on Canterlot business, she had the entire place to herself. Every single shelf lining the Treehouse Library's walls was crammed with condensed knowledge. All for her. Pausing as her mind snagged on that thought, Twilight frowned. Sometimes she wondered if she was the only pony in Ponyville who actually enjoyed a good book. There was something terribly disappointing and wrong about Spike's absence, resulting in predictable solitude. My mistake. When she thought about it like that, she almost missed the baby dragon already. Though she loved her friends dearly, none of them were exactly, to use a term loved to apply to her, bookworms. There was a loud thud, the library shaking as something impacted against the outside walls of the library. The resulting avalanche of displaced prose and parchment left the purple unicorn up to her flank in books and loose scrolls. She missed Spike twice as much suddenly. Ha! "Sorry, Twilight," called a familiar voice, and moments later, Rainbow Dash stuck her head in through a nearby window. The blue Pegasus pony, as always, seemed to be the case, looked no worse for wear. She surveyed the chaos with a giggle. "I was just practicing a new little trick." Twilight sighed, extracting herself from the lyrical landslide and regarding the culprit evenly. Is the library part of this trick, or is the colliding part the important bit? 'Cause if you could collide everywhere, I'm sure there are mountains around, she retorted while going about levitating books back where they belonged. Grumpy. Well, the general idea where they belonged anyway. Spike could sort them when he got back, she figured. She didn't get very far before she was interrupted. "Hey, let me help you with that." Twilight instantly turned around, dropping the books and locking Rainbow Dash with a rather unintentionally long stare. Rainbow Dash, for her part, looked a little uncomfortable after a moment, and grew fidgety rather quickly. "Hey, if you don't want help, I'm out of here. I just..." No, not at all," Twilight said, still surprised. Well, frankly, didn't expect you to offer." She'd have expected Rainbow Dash to be a little offended at that, but she seemed to take it in stride. "You could use a hoof, right? Besides, with my help, you'll have this cleaned up in 10 seconds flat." Unable to disagree with the logic, Twilight merely nodded, wincing a little as Dash made good on her promise and set about cramming everything from the alphabet, for the littlest of fillies and colts, to plathoofs, collected works into the shelves with trademark speed and imprecision. If not done in 10 seconds, flat or otherwise, they made good time, and the mess was cleaned up soon enough. The books were snug in their bookcases, the bookcases themselves were upright, and the floor had been given a quick sweeping. Twilight Sparkle automatically began moving back towards the desk where Dr. Hawk's theories awaited her with unreciprocated patience. "So, I guess I'll be going," Dash said, a little hesitant. Twilight turned back and raised an eyebrow in confusion, as if surprised she hadn't left already. It wasn't that she minded her friend's presence, but she'd expected her to already have flown off. "Thanks again for the help," she said with a smile, briefly wondering if she should offer a drink or some such. Yeah, so bye," Rainbow Dash replied, quickly disappearing in a rainbow blur out the window. The purple pony shrugged and went back to her book, already well underway to forgetting Rainbow Dash had even been there, until she was awoken by a very familiar thud the morning after. It's not that it was the exact same thud, it was a unique thud, suggesting a different point of impact, perhaps. Then again, that could also be attributed to the fact that she was aimed in the floor above where she'd seen the last time. Rapidly running out of thoughts on the matter, Twilight couldn't justify delaying getting out of bed any longer. Crawling slowly out from under her covers, fully knowing she had the worst bedmate ever, Twilight trotted down the main floor of the library in a haze of a filly who was most certainly not a morning pony. In the circular room that made up the majority of the ground floor, she found Rainbow Dash surveying a fallen trio of ornate bookcases, looking a little nervous. It was early in the morning, for Twilight anyway, but she was not so far gone that she didn't think Dash's fear uncharacteristic. Raising the library was practically Rainbow Dash's second job, and she didn't normally seem to have any compunctions about letting her friends sort out the mess. Noticing her descending the stairs, Rainbow Dash lit up, both brighter and a little sheepish now. "Oh, hey Twilight. Sorry again." "What in the name of Celestia are you even trying to do?" Twilight said, exasperated. The Pegasus puffed out her chest a little and regained a bit of her usual superior poise. "It's pretty advanced stuff. I don't think you'd really, get it. Pegasus stuff." After a second of tired silence from Twilight, Rainbow Dash pointedly flapped her wings a few times. Twilight waved a hoof irritably. "Yes, I get it. You have wings, I don't. Pegasus stuff. Can we please get this cleaned up?" "Oh, sure," Rainbow Dash replied sullenly, lowering her head a smidgen. "Aw. I know what Rainbow Dash is up to. She just wants to tell Twilight how she feels about her, and Twilight doesn't get the message." Twilight shook her head a little at the whole thing. She couldn't make herself be truly annoyed at the interruptions caused by her friend's antics. Rainbow Dash crashed into stuff now and then, just like Rarity had her hang-ups. Pinkie Pie was Pinkie Pie, and she had to admit she herself could get a little lost in her books sometimes. It wasn't worth making a fuss over. Soon enough, the library looked more or less like it had before. It was not as if anyone else would notice the difference before she or Spike could recatalog the books anyway. In the evening, 4 days later, she found herself revisiting that particular piece of internal monologue. In the aftermath of what must have been the sixth or seventh such crash, she face-hooked and closed her eyes. The library was still shaking a little from the impact. Had Rainbow Dash actually gotten better at crashing into her home? Could you even call that better? Seriously? The unicorn muttered to herself as she closed the book she had been reading by her bedside. This time, it seemed, the Pegasus pony had managed to actually crash through a window. Thus, Twilight found Rainbow Dash upside down by a wall between two very sturdy bookcases. Rather miraculously, the bookcases themselves still stood, though most of their contents were scattered about. Briefly, Twilight Sparkle wondered to herself if there was a single book left in the library that hadn't yet fallen prey to the menace of manuscripts that was Rainbow Dash. She was a regular scourge of scrolls. A hardback hater. Hey. Twilight was snapped back into focus by Rainbow Dash, who was righting herself and glaring at the heavy bookcases for some reason. Dash was as random as Pinkie Pie herself these days, it seemed. She'd be perky half the time and annoyed and short otherwise. Once, she had flown off without even offering to help. Now that's unusual. Seizing a hold of that thought, a surge of concern gripped Twilight as she watched Dash go about putting books back in place. Even more worrisome was the fact that Rainbow Dash seemed to be getting rather apt at the whole library cleanup routine. It triggered another warning bell. Hey, Rainbow, are you okay? I mean, okay? Twilight tried, levitating up a book in lieu of her helping her clean up. "Oh yeah! Why? Why wouldn't I be? Am I not okay?" Dash whipped around looking slightly panicked, her pupils tiny pinpricks. "Because you don't usually leave the library littered with letters twice a day?" Twilight asked, biting her lower lip. Dash retorted, averting her eyes. "Are you having problems with your wings or something?" Dash parried. "Something in the water? A bad week? Problems with flying in general? Do you need help?" Twilight pressed on. She wasn't really sure what she could do, but her growing concern wasn't really helped by Dash's failure to answer. Rather, it was solidifying very nicely and settling as a lump in her stomach. In the silence that followed, the Pegasus's eyes started to dash all around the room before setting on Twilight. Or perhaps not Twilight herself, but rather, the book she was levitating. Twilight followed her gaze to Aerodynamics Made Simple. A pair of green Pegasus colts were pictured on the cover, smiling confidently up at them. That's it! Rainbow Dash exclaimed, making Twilight jump a little. The trick I'm trying to pull is, way complex. I was never really any good with the theory and stuff, I guess. I'm more get out and do stuff kind of pony. She gave a nervous little laugh and scratched the back of her head. Oh, Twilight replied, still trying to recover from the shock of the brash Pegasus taking even a passing interest in a book. It took her all of 2 seconds to understand what she had to do if Dash was uncomfortable even admitting she needed help. Well, it's simple then. Aerodynamics is probably a good place to start, so how about we study this book together? She offered a reassuring smile. Rainbow Dash's face was unreadable, her stance tense. If it's okay with you, I mean? Settled then! Twilight nodded with satisfaction. I don't know the first thing about the subject, but don't worry, I'd love to learn. And it gives us something to do that isn't cleaning up the library, she added with a little grin. How's tomorrow? Sure, Dash agreed chipperly. When she was alone, Twilight allowed herself a few moves of her secret little happy dance. She had a reading gal pal. Hey! Skewer! There was so much to do to prepare. She'd have to make sure she knew the proper terminology. She'd have to check the supply of note parchment, quills, inks, and more besides. Best of all, these little things didn't feel like chores at all. This was going to be fun! When there was a soft rapping at the library door the next morning, Twilight had worked herself into a veritable frenzy of anticipatory giddiness. Come in! She yelled as she gave the area a scrutinous look. Quills and parchment, apple juice in the fridge, the library's sole copy of Aerodynamics Made Simple, the library's sole copy of Understanding Aerodynamics Made Simple, and 2 copies of her own notes on a later volume. She had thought of everything. There was a rather muffled thump at the door. Oh, Twilight blushed as she ran over to unlock the door, coming face to face with an annoyed-looking Rainbow Dash rubbing her snout with a hoof. Almost everything, then. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Spike is usually the one who opens it in the morning, the unicorn admitted. Is he still gone? Dash asked, looking around. He'll be back this weekend, so yes, Twilight nodded. Oh, cool. So the Pegasus's eyes were still flitting around everywhere, looking about for something unseen. Over here, Twilight called helpfully. She figured, I've set this up so we can take notes as we read and discuss the theories in the book. Uh-huh, Dash nodded half-heartedly. I've copied my notes on some helpful terms I read up on, and I looked up the authors, Tailwind Chaser and Blastbolt. The Pegasus froze right after finishing Twilight's sentence. Yeah, how did you know? Spitfire mentioned them at the gala or something, I think. They're cool. She's cool. It's cool. Rainbow Dash trotted up and sat down by the desk, staring intently at the books before her. Okay, let's see. Chapter 1? Chapter 1! Dash echoed with a hoof pump. Bring it on! What surprised Twilight the most was how quickly Dash picked up on things. Despite having horrible focus, as the unicorn could have predicted, she figured things out really swiftly. The zero-G turn principle, the inertia diffusion flap, the chapters crawled by, and despite seemingly looking at everything other than the book, she always had the right answers. That would make a sense between 30 and 60 degrees less efficient by an amount equal to... Twilight's brain churned as she scrabbled for parchment. About, say, 20%? Dash shrugged. Twilight did some quick calculations in the silence that stretched for a minute or so before nodding and turning to Rainbow Dash, coming snout to snout with her and smiling. 25%, actually, but very good. Rainbow Dash quickly looked back down to the book, blushing a little. The next chapter? Yep, next up. The front door to the library slammed open with a crash, admitting an orange flank adorned with a trio of apples. Twilight and Rainbow Dash quickly stood up, the latter of the two fillies taking a little step back and away. What the hey? Dash said as Applejack entered, hauling a huge basket of apples. Apple pies, apple fritters, and apple what-have-yous. The orange earth pony was immediately followed by Fluttershy, the timid yellow Pegasus pony carrying a single apple pie on her back, her face half hidden behind her pink mane. I'm just saying that I'd love to help. You didn't have to carry everything by... Applejack, who just placed the basket next to the door, cut Fluttershy off. though her voice was not ungentle. I told you I had it covered, didn't I? Managed just fine last week, but thank you for offering. But weekly apples and such, Twi. Oh, Rainbow Dash too? Well, how's that for a surprise? What's going on? Beaming, Twilight approached her two friends. Dash and I are studying for her newest trick. It's a volume on aerodynamics by Chaser and Bolt? A silence settled after Fluttershy's interruption, Fluttershy herself appearing most surprised of all the ponies, jumping at her own voice. Am I the only pony in Ponyville who hasn't heard of them? Twilight blinked and cocked her head, almost annoyed. I mean, no offense, Fluttershy, but I know you've never checked out any books except those. Twilight caught herself, noticing that Fluttershy had her head down on ground level and was blushing furiously. Books, she finished lamely. What's with this book anyway? She asked. Fluttershy glanced past Twilight at that, looking a little surprised and taken aback at something. When Twilight turned, all she saw was Rainbow Dash focusing very intently on the book in front of her. While it was a little odd and rude to ignore her friends like this, Twilight was hardly the right pony to criticize her for that, so she thought nothing of it. Applejack was now staring hard at Fluttershy, then at Rainbow Dash, a second later, back again at Fluttershy, who looked even more embarrassed and timid than usual, something that was no mean feat. Okay, what am I missing? AJ? Fluttershy? Twilight huffed, beginning to reel rather confused. Nothing, Fluttershy squeaked, looking ready to bolt under Applejack's glare and Twilight's attention both. Right, Twilight muttered. But hey, thank you for the apples, AJ. It might be a bit much for just me, though. Oh, right. I plumb forgot Spike was out of town. Ah, hayseed. Some of it'll spoil for sure. I can't take half of them back to the farm, I suppose. The Earth Pony's consternation... I've never seen that word before. Consternation was short-lived as Rainbow Dash, who'd been conspicuously quiet, perked up. I can help you with that, Twilight. No problem. Help me eat my food? Twilight asked, raising a brow. I mean, I'm already hanging out here a lot this week, right? I'll make it up to you. No problem. We wouldn't want any of Applejack's tasty apples to go to waste. Come on! Her apples are the best, most friendly and understanding apples in all of Equestria. Rainbow, what are you up to? Rainbow Dash was smiling very brightly at Applejack, who sighed and shook her head. I think maybe Fluttershy, Applejack, and possibly Rarity and Pinkie Pie. I don't know. But they're all in on this. They're all in on this little shenanigans that Rainbow Dash has got going on, because obviously Rainbow Dash is trying to get lucky with Twilight. Not in a sexual way, but I can see what she's doing. I'm getting this. Okay, well, that's it. I can't take no more of this. Good night, ladies, Applejack declared with a huff, stomping out and away. My Applejack voice isn't that good today, is it? Twilight had given up on getting anything sensible out of any of these ponies anyway, and simply shook her head. Thanks again, Applejack, she yelled after her. I'm going to. Rainbow Dash, could I maybe talk to you later tonight? If you want to? Fluttershy said as she edged out the door backwards, earning a tentative nod from the other Pegasus. As the door closed, Twilight took a minute to thank Celestia that Pinkie Pie hadn't been here too. She didn't think she could take any more confusion in one serving. Next chapter, was it? She suggested. Next chapter! Rainbow Dash echoed. Their studies continued until late afternoon, interrupted only by brief meals which further proved to Twilight that she'd been right. It was nice to spend time with Rainbow Dash outside of cleaning up her crash sites for a change. She even decided to stick around a little longer when Twilight declared that she had to take care of some other chores around the library. Thank you, Rainbow. You've been a great help, Twilight said as she stood by the door, ready to close up after Dash left. She had to admit that the library would feel a little empty when it was just her again, but she didn't think Rainbow Dash would enjoy the stargazing, and she had planned for the rest of the night. Hey, no problem. Happy to help. I'll be over tomorrow afternoon if that's cool, Rainbow Dash asked, to which Twilight could only smile. Sounds good to me. Looking forward to it, she said, truly meaning it. Alright, well that should do for now. 19 minutes and, well, going on 20 minutes, so... Oh, there you guys go. I I like the direction the story is going. It's a very, simple, cute clop fiction. I can tell something adorable is going to happen at the end, and there's going to be some, some adorable, oh, Twilight, I love you, kind of thing. So, I'll be looking forward to that, and all of you should too.